Hello and welcome to the Change Gang podcast with me, your host, Laura Ordile. I'm here to help you hold on to your sanity and your soul as you move through big change in your life. I'm here to guide you, inform you, and hopefully help you to triumph over trauma and the long list of symptoms that come along with it. This podcast series is to bring knowledge, share stories, and open up conversation around hope for those of you that suffer with the difficulties that present themselves in your life, from diagnosed or undiagnosed trauma. Labeled or not, I know you need help, and so do those that have graciously taken the time to have these conversations with me. So let's get to it. Welcome to the week, Change Gang, and to this amazing series that we're doing on trauma. I have a wonderful guest with me today, Heather McRoberts, and she is doing some wonderful work with people in the trauma field through hypnosis and through all of those wonderful healing modalities that we have. And so I wanted to chat with her a little bit about her journey on why she started to work in this field and some of the things that have happened for her in that. So hi, thanks for being here, Heather.
Hi, it's lovely to be with you.
So tell me a little bit about why did you choose to delve into an area that's pretty deep? People with trauma, with PTSD, with CPTSD, all of the wonderful labels that we get to toss out there for everyone can sometimes be a difficult thing. So what made you want to work with people struggling in that area?
My history is that I'm a general and psychiatric trained nurse, and I have got a long history of caring. It goes way back to the age of 9 when my father had a heart attack and the whole family kind of put him on a pedestal and just he sat there and everybody cared. So it was quite natural for me to fall into training as a nurse. And so therefore, I've done that for a long time. I'm retired now. So the caring field and doing psychiatry, I was just fascinated by the mind and how the mind works. So it was just easy as I learnt therapies to do hypnotherapy and anything else that came along within that field.
So when you stepped in, what brought you into doing hypnotherapy? Did you have an experience with it or did you hear someone talking about it?
Well, not as a client. First of all, I trained as a reflexologist.
Fun.
And I've done that for over 30 years. And I had moved house. I was living in a difficult situation. My marriage was breaking down. And we moved house. You can hear by my accent, I'm from Northern Ireland, but we had moved to Scotland and then we moved to England. When I moved to England, I was working as a nurse, new job. I was set up my practice as a reflexologist and suddenly I was unwell. And my doctor said, you've got arthritis, learn to live with it. And I actually couldn't do reflexology for about 2 years because I couldn't put pressure of my hands and it was my neck and shoulders. And the doctor said wonderful words to me and it just, I don't know about you, but if somebody says you can't do anything, I just say, watch me. So the doctor said to me, learn to live with it. And I was so cross that I then thought, okay, so one thing, I started to learn different things to help me, and that led me to looking at diet and et cetera, et cetera. But I thought, okay, so if I can't nurse and if I can't do reflexology, how am I going to earn a living? And that is what led me to hypnotherapy because I thought if I'm in a wheelchair, and I was age 39 when I was diagnosed, and if I'm in a wheelchair, I can still hypnotize people.
True. Yeah.
And that's when I did my hypnotherapy training way back. And that was 1992.
Well, you've been doing this for a good while then.
Yeah. Absolutely. But I've been doing it part-time along with, because I then find that actually if I went on a specific diet for arthritis, And within 6 weeks, I was pain free.
Wow.
I now know that it wasn't arthritis at all. It was stress because I was living in a difficult time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I went on this special diet and I was pain free very quickly. But then I had learned hypnotherapy and it was like, well, there's more out there. So I just continued. We stayed in that one place only for 18 months and moved again because of my husband's job. But I then looked around to see what else I could train in. I became a Reiki healer and practiced that and taught that for many years and did lots of different tapping, TFT, EFT and faster EFT. But I always
all FTs.
Yeah, love them. I love them. Yeah, I would say that bringing it up to date, that hypnotherapy is, I still do some reflexology. I retired from nursing nearly 2 years ago. I'd done 50 years and I thought that was long enough. So retired 2 years ago and started to do a bit more. And I thought that I would like to update my skills because I hadn't done any hypnotherapy training since my original stuff. And so I did with somebody here online because it was going through COVID and lockdowns and things. So I did it online, did an update with Freddie Jacquin, who's UK. Yeah. And then when you get into the community, everybody's sharing information. And then to get into trauma, somebody had said, oh, I've done this course about PTSD. Have a go at that. And that led me in. And it just feels so comfortable to do this specific type of hypnotherapy that I'm doing now. I'm never really comfortable about the stage hypnosis, the instant hypnosis. That really doesn't interest me. As a nurse, I worked in intensive care units for years, and I just loved that, having one patient and spending time. I loved looking after people end of life and spending that length of time. Even if I spent half an hour, but I thought if you've only got 48 hours to live and it takes me half an hour to make you comfortable, I'm happy. You know, it just felt really worthwhile. So the hypnotherapy I do now, which is slow and deep hypnotherapy, really suits me. And to spend, doing packages for kind of 6 weeks or whatever it needs, I just prefer that kind of pace.
Yes. And I think it's amazing. It is not a flash in the pan healing moment or anything. It is going deep, going where those wounds and symptoms and all of those things are, that allows you to kind of come up and clear that. And that's something that I really connected to as well when I did the same training that you're talking about. Obviously, that's how we met, is in the Beat Retreat group. And I think that the work that she does is incredible. And with the results that she gets, and now being able to bring that into my own work, it's pretty incredible. So how are you seeing that fit into your work with your people? Tell me maybe a story of someone who you're working with or have worked with that you've really seen a difference in.
Whenever I was doing the training, Sarah Yoon, who's the trainer, said that she did, I think, 8 or 9 case studies to present. And I thought, well, if she did that, I'm going to do that. So before I started kind of offering it, I thought I'll ask people. So I asked 9 people if they would be my guinea pigs as such, and go through 6 sessions or whatever it took. Now, there's one lady who kind of really stands out. She's a lady of 81. She has got COPD. She has got fibromyalgia. She's had a couple of operations on her back. And she has been through trauma in her life. So I asked her, she's agreed to be one of my guinea pigs. And at the end of the 6th session, she said, I feel clean on the inside, which at 81, and she has, say, lived through a lot of trauma, childhood and right through her life. But it's really, really interesting that it didn't stop there, because she's had several more sessions with me, because she said, you've taken the scales from my eyes because I can see now. And there's more issues coming up that we're working through.
Yeah.
At a really slow pace. So although I say that it's, the package is 6 sessions, sometimes you need more. I'm just so encouraged that even, it doesn't matter what age you are, if you're willing, to clear stuff. So I've introduced her to a specific diet that we know that may help. And she's just very open, and I'm still working with her occasionally.
It's great. Obviously, there's big things that are there that you want to clear and move out and get beyond. But that doesn't mean that there's still not some little niggling things that, that big thing's gone, but gosh, now I want this gone, or now I want that gone. But when you have that big glaring thing that's in front of you that is really causing issues in your life or causing something to be a problem in your life, that's the thing that you're focusing on, and that's the thing that you want gone. And then it kind of opens the door for the rest of it.
It does. Because I think when I look at my own life, and I'm sure you're aware, we've been writing our memoirs, which is a wonderful thing to do. And through my life, I have written diaries from time to time, but I've never kept it up. And recently I thought I've got 4 grandchildren. And I thought it'd be really nice to kind of write it from my perspective. That they know certain things, my children, obviously. But I thought, I just want to write these down. And it's quite amazing, the trauma that has been in my life, and I didn't even recognize it. So it's lovely to be aware of it and nearly validate myself and say, gosh, yes. I was writing today about it. And in the 70s, I started my training as a nurse, and that was in Northern Ireland. So the troubles started in 1968 in Northern Ireland. And it was quite remote to me because I come from a place called Bangor, which is a small town. So it was out of the way. There wasn't any violence there. And then I went to train in 1971 in Belfast.
Oh, goodness.
And suddenly there was stuff all around me that was reminding me. And there was one incident that comes to mind, that I was on a ward, and as a student nurse way back in those days, we were the only nurse that was in charge of a 20-bedded unit. And they don't do that nowadays. They don't leave student nurses to learn that way. But anyway, they did then. And there was a patient that was admitted to my ward about 12 o'clock at night. And she was a woman in her 30s, and she'd taken an overdose. And so the doctor was with her. She was fine. She was stable. But the doctor left, and I knew that her husband was sitting outside. So I went to bring him in to see her as she was settled. And as I got to the door of the ward, there was a noise outside, and I could hear shouting. And I looked through, there's a tiny glass window, and I looked through and I saw this one man kicking another man in the head. There's a man sitting with his head down, and this man was standing over him, and he was just kicking him in the face. And I didn't even think. I just went rushing out, grabbed him by the shoulder and said, "What do you think you're doing? This is a hospital. And there's people here that are sick and they're trying to sleep." And he went, "Oh, sorry. And with that, he went scuttling off and got into a lift and went. And this man that was sitting with his head down, he said, "That's my brother-in-law. That's the wife's brother." And he's the head of the UDA, which was the Protestant paramilitary organization. He's the head of the UDA here. He just said he's going home to get a gun and come and shoot me because it's my fault that she's taken an overdose. So I said, get in here. I took him into the ward. I took him along a corridor, put him into a staff room and said, you stay here. Gave him blankets and I said, you stay here. I'll get you out in the morning before. And I spent the night going to look out and see if anybody had turned up. During the night at one stage in the morning, I went to the ward next door to me and there were two soldiers there. They were guarding one of their colleagues. And they said, oh, that was very brave. We watched you, they said, but we couldn't come out because if we had come out, they would have known that there was British soldiers here. We would have given our position away. And as I was thinking about this story, I thought, well, I don't think it was bravery. It was just instant, do this. But actually, so many things happened to me that, and I hid this husband until the morning and then sent him out. I didn't tell my night sister or anything. And there were various things that happened during my training and during the years later. That's just how it was. But actually, it was traumatic.
Yes.
And because I was taught that my father was the most important person and you just looked after him and, don't be selfish, don't be this, don't think of yourself and you just get on with it. I was a prime candidate for being an over-helper.
And caretaker.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I think something you said there is so important because it's so true in so many ways in that trauma isn't necessarily recognized in the moment and the time that it's happening. We just think, that's how it was. That's what it is. That's our life. That's something. Until later, someone's going, what? Oh my goodness. And then you realize, oh, okay, maybe it wasn't quite as normal as I thought it was. Yeah. And oftentimes what happens, I found with trauma people too, or, people having had my own trauma as well, is, and it's the weirdest thing, but, people say you don't know till you know. And so you don't connect what happened to you to the definition of abuse or trauma or something else. It's just like, oh, this happened to me. And then all of a sudden something clicks and it's like, oh, that was actually that, that was child abuse or that was, verbal abuse or gosh, he hit me and I didn't even think of it as being abuse. That's right. Something else. That's when you're beat to a pulp and put in someplace else. That's what happens to someone else. But we have so many things along our path that build up in that trauma fold. Just like that incident where you saw someone getting beat up and you reacted. Thank you for reacting because, some people wouldn't, but you did and you don't think about it. You just go do what you're supposed to do. But then there's that part of you that holds that inside of you and kind of anchors it and puts a little pin in that moment in time. And then unfortunately, as those moments in time, they build up along the way and cause issues later in life that people don't connect to that pin, to that anchor, to that moment. Do you see that with some of the patients that you're working with now, some of your clients?
Absolutely, yes. And it's being able to say or listen to their stories and kind of validate that and kind of say, do you think that was all right? That you start to question what has happened to them and if it is all right, or actually, is it some kind of abuse? And quite often, I think people who have emotional abuse don't always recognize it. Physical abuse, yeah, you can say, yeah, I broke my finger, broke my arm, whatever. But I think that emotional abuse, financial abuse, isn't always recognized. And no. I find that people who are, I'm a child of the 50s and 60s. So children were seen and not heard. So right. You just accepted a certain way. It's just so different nowadays that people are recognizing things much more quickly. I remember my daughter, in the UK, we had a lady called Esther Ranson who started a thing called Childline, and it was allowing kids to phone in and talk about their traumas and abuse. And I remember that my daughter was probably about 11 or 12, and my husband said something to her really crossly, and she said, "Don't say that. I'll phone Esther Ranson and tell her what you've said." We were horrified at the time, but it was just so good that kids were being told that actually you have a voice and you can shout out and, call it out. I mean, she wasn't abused by my husband at all, but, she was telling us that she knew about it, which was great.
So did you recognize, or are you just now coming to the point where you're recognizing those moments of trauma throughout your life?
In my own life, there are some traumas I recognize. I realized quite a long time ago that because of my upbringing and my father being unwell from I was 9, I was trained to be a carer. So therefore, when I was getting married, I looked for somebody to care for because that was comfortable.
Yeah.
So I entered a codependent relationship, and when I got married, I had no idea. But that marriage lasted for 30 years. Certainly, I found it very difficult for 20 of those years. And I'm quite comfortable to say that I'm a member of a 12-step program, which is Al-Anon, which has been the spiritual foundation and savior of my life. And that's where I started to learn about myself and the things that triggered me and to get some understanding of the journey I'd come on my life.
Well, as you dove in and learned a little bit about the process of trauma and working, on this new way of doing hypnotherapy and things, what was one of the things that surprised you about learning about PTSD or trauma that it was like, oh, that makes total sense, but it didn't even occur to me? Was there anything like that came up?
I suppose the term PTSD, I feel, is we've all had trauma.
Yes.
And it's like, I kind of feel sometimes that the people that say I've got PTSD are the ones that have major trauma. But I think the protocol that we use can help anybody, because the majority of people will have some kind of trauma that is affecting their behavior, and that if they wish to change. So I think that I'm surprised or encouraged more that I want to say to people, but if you've got, like myself, I discovered that my comfort eating, hypnotherapy will not work, doing gastric bands, all the rest. I need to address all the emotions and go deep with it, which I still am on that journey.
Well, isn't it great? Because what you just said, though, is so important. But one of the most significant things about this is that when you talk about addressing it, which is absolutely true and right, but it's not addressing it as in like a normal talk therapy, or even, and I'm not shaming or putting aside, but even in CBT or EMDR, all of those things, it's not the same process with this, because we're not asking you to sit and tell us all the feelings, all the process, all of that. It's being worked out in your mind, in your subconscious, at a level that you might remember and you might not, but it's working out. And that's the magic. I think that is so cool.
The lovely thing is that you've got all the answers inside of you.
Yes.
And it's saying that to people. I'm only facilitating you some of the way. You're going to do the work, and you don't need to involve me. So you don't need to tell me anything if you don't want to. It'll still work. Yeah, so I find that lovely. People usually do tell you a certain amount, but it's lovely to have those people that said, oh, well, this has changed. And I didn't even tell you about that. So there are small, gains that people haven't even mentioned.
Have you had that happen?
Oh, yes.
Tell me about one of them.
I had a girl a couple of weeks ago who started to talk about her spider phobia. And I just said, well, that's all right, and she said, but it's gone now. She said, but I used to have it, and she hadn't mentioned it.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's so cool. That's part of what I love about this too, is that with the depth of work that is being done here, and at a level where, our subconscious knows everything about us, knows everything. And by going in and clearing, it's like, oh, you want to clear that? Well, let's clear this too. Let's take care of that too, because some of those things are associated with those blocks that we have in place, those building blocks that from those little traumas or big traumas or whatever it was. And when you go in and you get that foundation, it kind of clears a lot of things that you didn't even know were associated.
Yes. So that's lovely that you can have those gains without even knowing it.
I think so too. I think that's absolutely amazing to be able to do that. Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop us here for now, but we're definitely going to have some more conversation. Heather, thank you so much for being here. Can you tell people where they can come and connect with you?
Yes, I'm really bad because I haven't got a website anymore.
That's okay.
On Facebook, it's My Therapy Solutions is my Facebook page, and they can contact me from there.
That's great. That's perfect. You don't have to do all the things when you're just trying to help somebody. If someone can reach out to you, that's perfect, I think.
I find that through the years, I've always had more clients than I can, I'm always stretching myself to take in more people, and it's only been word of mouth. And my Facebook page. So I did have a website for a while, but it crashed and lost it. And anyway, I don't really believe that I need to do a lot of marketing. I'm not really comfortable with marketing as such.
That's okay. That's all right. You're also I know that you are also listed on the Beat Retreat website under Find a Therapist. You're in there as well. If they do want a website to go to, they can go to the Beat Retreat, and that does talk a lot about what we've been talking about today. They can get information there, but I know you're on that site as well. Thank you so much for being here with me and chatting with me, and we'll talk again.
Thank you.
I hope today's episode was interesting and helpful to you in some way. If so, find someone to share it with. Maybe it will help them too. If you'd like to know more about anything discussed here today, you can find all the places to connect with me and the guest speakers in the show notes. Or go to lauraordile.com, LauraOrdile.com, and you can reach out to me there. Until next time, ask when you need help, be kind to yourself, and have a happy day.